Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in to this panel discussion about Blackened Roots. It's a new anthology that just came out from Mocha Memoirs Press, and we're so excited to, exactly, thank you for holding that up, Stephen. We're so excited to talk about it because everyone here has been involved in some way, and I'm honored to be among these wonderful authors and have a story in here as well. And if you don't mind, let's hold it even closer because this cover is amazing. If you can take a look at the bottom of that, so much stuff to look at. So I'm here today. I'm going to let them introduce themselves because I would never do the justice that should be done. If you don't mind, can we start from the top left? Nicole, I see you on my top left. Can you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Nicole Givens Kurtz. I'm the owner of Mocha Memoirs Press and co-editor of Blackened Roots. I'm also an author. I write science fiction, fantasy, horror, weird westerns, and I am a mom and occasionally an anime fan.
Very nice. Errick, you're next on my top.
All right. My name's Errick Nunnally. I'm an author. I tend to think of what I do as speculative fiction because I don't sort of stick to any genre. I have 2 novels out in the wild right now, Blood for the Sun and All the Dead Men. Really proud to have a story in Blackened Roots, but I also have something coming out soon in Death Realm Spirits. So I've got a number of short stories and working on more novels as we go.
Excellent. Excellent. And Stephen, can you talk, please?
Yes, I can. Stephen Van Patten, horror writer, tequila enthusiast, and I'm also a contributing writer in Blackened Roots. I also have a vampire series, a serial killer series, a sort of a anthology series with my podcast mates from Beef, Wine, and Shenanigans, Mark Abbott, Kirk Johnson, and Denise Tapscott. I also occasionally stage manage a TV show. I also here and there all over the country. And I also do Black history for a YouTube channel called Extra Credit.
Nice. And Sumiko Saulson is in transit. We'll be back on screen in a few minutes, but they are an author, poet, just a wonderful human being to know. I'm Elmarie Wood. I'm a psychological horror author. I have a short story in this anthology.
Hello.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. Please introduce yourself, Sumiko.
Hi. I'm not able to turn my video on, so you're going to have to do that for me.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Sumiko Saulson. I am a Bram Stoker-nominated horror poet, also Elgin-nominated, winner of the 2018 Afro-Surrealist Writers Award. And I mostly write horror, but I also write science fiction and dark fantasy. Thank you.
Wonderful. And I'm Elmarie Wood, and I'm happy to be here. So let's chat. Really, the first question I really want to ask is, Nicole, where did this come from? Right? How did you come up with this idea?
Oh, I didn't. It was Tonia Ransom, my co-editor. It was her idea. Tonia had presented, I think, an essay or a paper at Multiverse on the original origins of zombies and how it came, how it derived, the whole genre derives from like hoodoo. And she was like, we should just do an anthology of hoodoo stories or zombie stories that are from authors from the African diaspora. And I was just like, we had just done Slay. And so just like shortly after, about a year after Slay came out. And so I was like, okay, let's do this. That sounds fantastic because there wasn't one, right? There's not an anthology like Blackened Roots. And so I can't take credit for the idea. I just happen to have the publishing company, right? But it was totally Tonia Ransom's idea.
That's wonderful. I'm glad, however, she came up with the idea that she did. It was really exciting to see that call for, for stories. And like I said, I'm really excited to just be among the same pages with authors that I truly admire. So let me ask you this then. For those of you who are in the book, which is all of us, is this any different from what you typically write? Like, from my perspective, I write psychological horror. So, and I do like to play with antagonists, but when I do, it's usually a vampire. It's typically not a zombie. I think I could probably count on one hand out of 200 plus stories, how many zombie stories I've written. So I was kind of excited that I could, play with this one. But is it different from what you guys write?
Yes. Yeah, 100%.
Really?
You need to expound, Errick.
I tend to think that literally every writer has at least one zombie story in them. At least one. Like everybody has one idea for the dead coming back to life. But it's not something that I do a lot of. I have written, I think, 2 stories that involve, dead things walking around. But the one that I have in Blackened Roots, I really wanted to do something that was something that I hadn't seen before, and sort of approached the genre of an undead body a little differently. So I hope I got that right.
We won't know if you didn't. I mean,
I can attest that you got it right. When people tell me about some of their favorite stories in the book, yours always is amongst that list.
Ooh.
All right.
Just so you know.
That's great.
Yep.
Sumiko, Stephen, what do you think? Is it different from what you normally do?
It's horror comedy, and the one time that I have, I wrote a whole zombie book, Warmth, like about 10 years ago, and that definitely was also horror comedy. I will say that I didn't go with a very traditional zombie story, because there are a lot of them told. So A Confusion of the Gods is a story where, the gods are getting together, the death gods are getting together, and they're confused because the undead have risen and they want to know who is responsible for this mess. So
let the bickering commence.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of egos involved.
Yes.
What do they call it? A locked room crime? Like it's only us here. Like one of us had done it.
Oh, I like it.
With gods. I think that's a neat idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Well, for me, this story that I did, zombies was not something I'm known for or anything I'd done prior to this, but it's definitely something I was meaning to explore. And the funny thing about it, there's one now. So get a gun. No. So here in New York, we at the Horror Writers Association chapter that we have here, we occasionally do these readings. And what I like to do is, for my readings, I don't necessarily read anything I've already published. I kind of usually just make up something. And so what I decided to do, just to kind of mess with everybody, is I wrote this zombie story so the basic end of the story is it's a zombie that is auditioning for an American Idol type show. and that required a song. So in the midst of this, I had, it's kind of funny because I had my friend Lane Sparber, who's like a lighting director, and that's how I know him, but he plays guitar. So I had him sneak into the garden where we have the Horror Writers Association stuff. And as I was reading the story, I give him a cue. He whips out the guitar, and Teal and the rest of them are like, what the hell? And then
Teal was like, what is going on?
Yeah, well, they all were. And then I sang this country song. And I kind of wrapped that up pretty quick. It doesn't go much further than, the judges saying, all right, well, you're going to Memphis there, Rusty C. Nail. That's the zombie's name. So in this version that's in Blackened Roots, it's completely drawn out. It involves characters from my vampire series.
Mm-hmm.
It's a whole other thing. So then it's funny because the great Tonia Ransom, when she contacted me saying they wanted to do an audio version of the story, I was like, well, I already recorded a song, right? because the other thing is we had gotten together and done like a short film version, which again doesn't go as far. It's going to be edited one of these days. But my original intention was to find somebody who could be in the makeup and play guitar. Surprisingly, even though I live in New York, that did not work out. So I ended up having to put the makeup on, and we rented we rented a theatrical space. And I remember I had to go to the bathroom in the zombie makeup at one point, and I scared the hell out of a 6-year-old who was literally just walking around. So there, all that to say, there will be a short film version of this coming out soon. It won't be as expanded as what's in Blackened Roots. Christian Brookwater, for those of you that read my vampire stuff, he won't actually be in the film. But I thought it would be nice to actually expand that and sort of like pull a Marvel and like connect him to all my other nefarious characters from my other work. Yeah, so that was basically all that to say. This is me losing my zombie virginity, I guess. And there you have it.
You know, Steve,
That's really cool.
Steve, none of that sounds legal to me. You know, you and Zigzag Claiborne, if you've never read together, you two should go on the road with that nonsense.
Oh goodness.
Oh, that would be
That's
hilarious.
pretty
I'm
cool
with it.
though. The way that you expanded it that way is, I mean, that's unique. But again, how unique is it? As we're writing, don't we often see that we can make connections with some of the other characters that we have in other pieces? I mean, is that something you do very often? I mean, I've always said, you know, for horror authors, what we typically do is like standalone work. I mean, the book begins and ends, it's over. That's it. We don't always do this connecting stuff. That's more fantasy, and it's interesting, but it's not something that horror does a lot. But you just really gave me some ideas of what you just did, Stephen. I was like, have you all done that before? Have you made connections to other stories and maybe they fed some of what you wrote here?
I haven't, but I know a few people that have. Like, you know, like almost all of Brian Keene's stuff is connected. Stephen King, and a couple of other people. Like they just have like all these threads that connect everything that they've written. And no, I haven't. Not unless it was you know, just sequels and short stories that are all in the same universe.
Yeah,
Same,
it's funny
like
now that you. Oh, sorry.
No, you go, Stephen.
Oh no. So Eric just reminded me about the Gunslinger, which I had been reading, and then I kind of put it down, and then somebody told me, you know, Barlow's in there, right? And I'm like, Barlow, like, and then I'm like jumping back at Barlow being Vampire from Salem's Lot.
Yep.
Yeah. So I totally get that. I'm totally, you know, and the thing is, Marvel has kind of like, you know, they've I can't even imagine what's going to happen. Like, not to get us too far off the subject, but what's going to happen with Blade now that there's this whole multiverse thing, and everybody's like, oh, Wesley Snipes, they should have used him. It's like, I get a feeling we're going to see Wesley in the outfit again.
Right, yeah.
Maybe so, yeah.
At some point, yeah.
He's too old.
No, he'll be the mentor Blade to the
CGI,
younger Blade from 2025 or something like that. Well, you'll definitely see him in the outfit again. I think that.
I mean, Rocky's still in the Rocky movies, right? He did a movie. What was the?
They just pulled him out of the last Creed movie, though.
That's true. I noticed that. I noticed that.
And had some sort of disagreement or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
For horror stuff, like weird westerns, they all take place in the same area. Like they all are in the New Mexico territory. So in that way, they're connected. And there's some recurring characters in short stories, as Eric mentioned. Like some of his characters are in the same town or in the same universe, but they may or may not know each other. I do that with my Western work in horror. But you're right. Normally for stories, it's a one and done, right? It's a standalone. It's because then you get your final girl, or you get whatever have you. Here's the result, the end result of whatever horror they've seen or gone through. The thing I really love about Blackened Roots, it's not a huge anthology, but every single story is very, very different. And then none of them are traditional zombie stories, which is what I expected, right? Because I didn't expect us to have Night of the Living Dead or any of those type of stories, because we asked A, not for those, and B, we asked for, I think as a people we are so diverse because we're not a monolith, I knew we would get various types of stories. And so they were really good and very different. And I really love that about the anthology the most, is diversity, no pun intended.
I definitely like that you did not want the Romero type zombie. No. I thought that was just such an interesting, because that's what we see, right? I mean, that's the zombie that when we think about zombie, most people are thinking about Night of the Living Dead or Dawn of the Dead if they're a certain age. I mean, that's the one people go back to by generation if you think about it. But it was nice to, if you think about it, right?
It's true. Like, I was thinking like 28 Days Later, but that's a whole other segment,
definitely.
Right?
Oh, absolutely. Well, again, you know, me and those running zombies, I'm afraid of that. Like, don't start running. Don't start running. That's the issue there.
That zombie
shuffling or fast. Pick your poison.
I gotta feel like I can save myself. If you are sprinting down the corridor, I'm done. Okay, I can't get away fast enough. But when I think about writing a zombie for someone who doesn't write zombies, it was refreshing to know that you didn't want that traditional thing, because I'm like, I want to try something else. So I don't know.
I feel like my zombies actually were kind of Romero type zombies, because what I ended up doing was, you know, we had StokerCon in Pittsburgh and everyone was talking about Romero and Romero zombies, and that was kind of my inspiration. So instead of it being like horror writers going to StokerCon, it was a bunch of death gods going to DeathCon, and they were all arguing about the origin of these zombies. Where did they even come from? And if you notice, DeathCon is in Pittsburgh in this story.
Wow.
It's kind of meta in that way, right?
I like that.
But I also like that the point of view for that story isn't so much about the undead, but more, how the hell they get here? Like, what are we doing? Who did this? Who's at fault? I love that premise. So yeah, even though they're like, the zombies again aren't really the focus, and that's kind of the story it's kind of the theme for all the stories. It's not really about the undead, it's about the living. And those aspects of Blackened Roots I really loved as well. And so like in Stephen's story, there's this disconnect between the people who want to use him for his novelty, but again, they don't see him as a person. He's a product, right? Until things start slipping, and I mean like eyeballs and skin, right? So like until like, even though it's ridiculous that this zombie is singing, right? The lunacy of that kind of loses it when it's A, popular, and B, people, it's a product they could sell, right? For in this case. So, and if you look at Errick's story, again, the protagonist is in many ways looking for his humanity, right? And so each story, even though they have zombies in them, really aren't about the zombies at all. It's about the living, quote unquote. Stephen, I know yours is undead living, but you know. Lisa, even in your story, Lisa, your story is about that relationship between brother and sister. It's really not about the zombies. Right. It's about how when there's an inheritance left, the way people dissolve relationships in favor of things, right, or in favor of property in this instance, and those relationships, those bonds, kind of get like eaten up beneath the tires of what we want, right? And so, and things that we desire versus working on maintaining that bond. And that's kind of like an after effect of grief. So even in inheritance, it's really not about the zombies. It's about that brother and sister relationship that gets dissolved.
You see, you just made us all sound so smart. You know what I think?
It's true.
What I think is interesting is that if you were to like, well, I don't write a lot of zombie stuff, but I definitely have watched like The Walking Dead from beginning to end, right? I've just consumed that show. And that too is not about the zombies. After a while, you just kind of it's about the survivors and what they go through. So I wonder, do we think that's because there's but so far we can go with this kind of antagonist, right? I mean, vampires are sexy and whatever we can think about with vampires, you know, it's just they're appealing and just
They're aesthetic, right?
there's so much about a vampire that just sort of draws us in, and it's irrational if you can look at it from the outside, but we don't. We just get drawn in. A zombie is rotting flesh. The thing is dead. I mean, it's rotting flesh. Is it that we think we can't create those same sorts of storylines with this sort of this sort of undead? Because you know, vampires are dead too, right? So is it that we can't do anymore and do the traditional things with this kind of antagonist?
But if you think about traditional hoodoo, they're not rotting corpses,
right?
And so I think the last story in the anthology is Mustafa's story. It's not, there's no rotting corpse at all.
Okay.
It's a, you know, it's a heroine story. And so I think when we think about zombies as being just like either shuffling or decomposing, you gotta remember like an Angel Heart, right? Which is a horrible movie, by the way. So it's not a good example of hoodoo.
Can I just stop her? Angel Heart is my favorite movie ever.
But it's not a good example. But it's not an accurate depiction of hoodoo.
I'm assuming for reasons that have nothing to do with voodoo, zombies, or anything else. But I
listen, that movie is fantastic. We can discuss this after this chat. We'll do a screening and then we'll talk.
All I'm saying is that the under the umbrella of zombies, and I'll shut up because I've talked a lot.
I want you to keep talking.
Underneath the umbrella of zombies, there are, and this is where Tonia was trying to get. I'm not trying to speak for her, but this is I think where she was trying to get at in having an anthology like ours, in the sense that we wanted to move away from this popular concept that these are all that zombies are, but originally this is not what the undead meant. Something completely different. It wasn't this. It was taking over the mind of a person and having command of another being, which is really scary if you think about it. It's almost versus zombie. It's almost like a possession, and so that is what's terrifying, right? You don't want that in your life. You don't want your brother to suddenly turn on you. You know what I mean? So I think that's part of it. But I don't know. What do you guys think? Lisa's asking about that zombie. Is this the only way we can depict them?
Yeah, I think this is the gift of made up things. Like zombies have typically been the natural disaster, and what's really interesting about stories that have them in it is the people, like whomever's dealing with that situation, not these, because they traditionally they really don't have any autonomy. But the gift of made up things means that like Steve can write a story where zombie's the main character and has autonomy, etc., etc. So the sky's the limit. I love when these little arguments come up, and amongst weirdos like ourselves, oh, you can't do that with, people complain about Twilight, you can't do that with vampires, and I'm like, what's a traditional vampire? Like, you could escape across a stream of running water, or keep a pocket full of rice in your pocket, and if you really want to write a traditional vampire, So the gift of made up things is we can redefine these things any way we like and make them fit any way that we need them to in any kind of story we want. And I think that's a lot of fun, to be able to pick up this little thing from this made up mythology and then do something else with it. Or even if you could, the practice of voodoo and such is not made up, and you could do something with that as well, and make something up out of it. Like, there's just no limits, which is what I appreciate about writing. There's really no guardrails on it.
Yeah, I definitely think that you can have stories that center zombies, like Warm Bodies. That was a great paranormal romance.
Oh, that was a good story. Yeah,
I love that story. And I think that my story Warmth actually, the zombie is just part of a ghoulish lifestyle. So the ghouls turn into zombies eventually, which means that actually the zombies are the people that are speaking. They're the protags, people that are, know that when they die, they're going to become zombies. So that adds a whole different like layer to the story. So yeah, I think you can do that.
Well, just piggybacking off of Eric's point, the challenge for making stuff up is, for me anyway, it's setting these rules and then making sure you don't break them in the end. I think that's the one thing that you've got to kind of like work with. It's like, you've got all the creative license in the world, like Errick said. And in my case, it's, he shows up at a TV studio, and he plays guitar and can sing. Sure, people are going to question that. They're going to, because that's definitely non-traditional. But what I do is I also stay within certain parameters. At least I tried to. But at the same time,
you got to stick with it.
Right. But I also incorporate my time working in television. I also incorporate my political leanings a little bit. So because what's happened, I think, in a traditional sense, especially with shows like Walking Dead and so on, the zombies are basically like are part of a circumstance, and the drama is the interaction with the people as they deal with circumstance. So that to me is ultimately like, like would be sticking into the box of the Romeros and all that stuff. And since you asked for something different, gave you something different.
And I loved it. I really loved it.
I said, you can't unring that bell.
You can't. And so, like, it's done. Morgan Freeman voice, it's done. Okay, so
they used to call me Crazy Joe, but now you call me Batman. Yeah, sorry.
But I'm not going to get that out of my head at all now.
Good.
Fully hear that.
My work here is done. Thank you.
Oh.
I'm so sorry. Now I'm about to start singing on me. Okay, so never mind.
I'm sorry.
I was going
You
to
leaving, Sumiko?
I think I'm gonna have to, because people are coming in here for the reading that I have at 7.
People are staring at you like this. Like, why aren't you talking to us?
Yeah, get up in front of the whole thing like this.
Right?
They're not paying attention.
Sumiko.
Thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you.
I was going to say that I'm looking at, you've got such a wonderful, the screen changed on me, and all of a sudden everything was much, much bigger. Just yes, and we are like this all the time. Folks who are watching,
All the time.
we are really like this all the time. Now,
smash.
It's a small community, and that's what I was looking at the table of contents. It's a small community. What I really enjoyed was being able to crack this open and say, oh, I'm so excited to read this one. I hadn't read that one before, but because I knew the author, either personally, I knew their work, and I was excited to see the next thing. Because I don't know, as a creative, it's really nice to stretch your legs. Like I said, this is different for me, and we all tried something different because the call was different, told us not to do the thing we were thinking maybe it would be easier and do something else. And so we had the chance to try it out. And there's, you never know. These submission calls, you never know what's going to happen. And it was fun to see the creativity that was coming out of this. I'm not all the way through it yet. I'm still, reading as I go, and I'm really enjoying, some of these folks I don't know. Many I do, but some I don't know. And I'm so excited to read the new work. So, how do you, I know you got many submissions to this, I'm sure. How do you?
We did not.
You didn't?
We didn't do an open call.
Right.
Tonia and I sat together and made a list of people that we wanted in the anthology. We didn't do an open call.
I knew, well, I was thinking this was cool because I heard about it, but I thought there was a window where you had like a little bit. So no.
We did not ask for, no. And only because there was several things that were happening at that time that made that not a realistic thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had a list of authors that we wanted to invite to do this anthology. And I think we got it down to like 15.
Mm-hmm.
And then I know that 2 of our authors were unable to meet the new deadline because we had to shift the deadline a little bit. Thank you, unpleasantness.
Right, exactly.
Because we both had it,
Mm-hmm.
which kind of disrupted our timeline a lot. Because COVID brain is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But we did not do an open call, and that was a deliberate choice. And I know that Tonia probably approached some of you guys at Stoker, if I'm not mistaken, and kind of said, "Hey, would you be interested in this?"
Mm-hmm.
And that was our plan. It was to she was going to Stoker, and that we had made a list of people that we knew would be there that we would like to have stories from, and that we were inviting to the anthology. So it was an invitation only work. It was not an open call work. Mm-mm. Yeah, fully. Unlike Slay.
Definitely had the feel of, because you really want to make sure that you want to make sure you're submitting good stuff, and it's different, and it's so, and you don't have any idea what anyone else is going to write, so you don't want to have the same kind of idea.
We were as surprised by the stories as you guys are, because we didn't know what anyone was doing. And I remember Mark sending me an email going, "Hey, I wrote this story and it's really long." Because we had like a word cap, and his was like $1,000 or so over.
Wow,
that's a lot.
Yeah,
that's not.
We're not talking 20 words. But then I was like, just send it anyway, because sometimes stories, and this is why we kind of increased the cap for the stories from 5,000 words, which it was for Slay, to 7,500 words, because you have to lay a lot of background and context for these types of stories, right? And so you need room, word count room to do that. And so that was right. And so his story was fantastic. It's a slave ship. Oh, I love that story so much. Just like a flashback and a forward, and it's okay. You have to read that story. It was phenomenal.
The title. I'll just mention the title.
And so yeah, every single, like, of course we edited it and we tightened some areas, but for the most part, every word of that story was necessary.
That's awesome.
And warranted. It was freaking brilliant. I was like, oh, I love this. I love every story in the anthology, actually. And I was really surprised because sometimes, in anthologies, you never know, right?
Yeah.
No. Everybody served. And I was super excited about that, too, that everyone served.
And this is a different type of anthology from what's in the market now. I mean, you get the zombie books, right? You get the end of the world books, and you see those, but this is different. This is different. What made you decide? And I don't want to keep asking. I keep asking I'm like, Nicole. It's not because because we were all asked to do this, and we did something. I mean, these stories
you answer the call.
These stories are amazing. So I'm
like
intrigued. I'm intrigued by the idea of how, I know how it came about, but that it was just Black stories.
Yes.
And that's that you don't see that. That's not in the market. So it's
no,
just not.
It's not.
And I'm excited that it's here now, to be frank. When you did that, like, what was the first thought process of saying, this is what I want it to be, and that's how it's gonna go?
Oh, me and Tonia were like, we met often, right? And kind of discuss what her vision was for it, and then how I could help. And again, this isn't my brainchild. It was Tonia Ransom's brainchild, but I was just there to help flesh it out. In terms of like, okay, how many words do we want it to be? How many stories do we want it to be? Which authors do we want it to be? ironically enough, it's the TOC is male heavy. That was not on purpose. We did invite an equal number of female, male, and non-binary authors. Okay, but due to individual author circumstances, a few weren't able to meet the deadline and get their stories turned in on time, and just couldn't. Sometimes you can't work it. I mean, you say yes, I'm up for that, and then sometimes the story just doesn't come, or life happens. And so in those instances, because of those things happening, we have a male heavy TOC, and I was very nervous about that.
Really?
Yeah, I don't want to. We have conversations all the time about how TOCs for anthologies need to be, equal parts, right? And I was like, I don't want anyone saying that we intentionally just invited the males to participate in this, which is not true. It just looks that way. So that was something
Don't believe what you're seeing.
No, believe what you're seeing, but know that there is circumstances around that you may not be aware of. That we just didn't say, let's invite all the handsome men and let's go. That's not what we did. and sprinkle in a few women for show. No, that's not. Because someone on the internet, you guys know, is saying that, and I'm like, that's not what happened at all. But we really loved all the stories. It was really great. Do we have? Have you guys had a chance to read? I know at least you're in it. Do you have other stories that you've read from the anthology, like Eden's story?
Well, I read Mark's story. I may have baited it a little, and it's magnificent, as you said. That's actually my personal favorite. I
love that story.
I have actually not finished the book myself because
life happens,
the VMAs and a few other things. I am looking forward to Errick's because as I've looked online to see what people are saying, Errick is getting high praise. So that's probably
spend more time online.
There you go. Yeah, man, shit. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to that. Might even try to get that done Saturday because I think people are leaving me alone Saturday. So I'm along with looking forward to being left alone. I definitely will get to that bit of literature.
I haven't read it yet.
Okay, I know you have life.
I just haven't read it yet. Yeah. But it's funny. We were before we started. One of the things we were talking about is the TBR list, right? And you have too many books, right, to actually read. And what is it that makes some bubble up and you grab it and read it? Is it the cover, the title, something somebody says? And for me, it's usually talking about it, right? So hearing about some of the other stories in it, is helping to push it up the list. So, I'm sure I'll read it sooner.
And for those who don't have a copy or are unable to read it, you can also hear some of the stories on Nightlight Horror Podcast.
Yeah, that's cool.
Because some of the stories were already done and converted to audio so that you can listen to them. I know Errick's stories there, Stephen, your stories there.
Oh yeah. Complete with the song.
Oh, that's awesome.
Excellent.
It really lends itself to audio.
So if you go,
which is also available on Spotify and Amazon.
Is it really?
Yes, it is actually.
Oh my god!
I love that.
Oh, that's fantastic.
iTunes is messing with me for some reason, but yeah, if you go on Spotify right now, look for Rusty C. Nail Dead Man Country. You'll see me in zombie makeup looking up like this, trying to look like I'm an intellectual zombie. And, and yeah, it's on. If you don't want to listen to it on Nightlight, you certainly just, get it from Amazon or Spotify.
Now, how do you guys think your stories translated to audio? Does it sound pretty good? I mean, do you think you get the same feeling that you would get if you were reading it, or what do you think? Sometimes not everything is good as an audiobook or an audio file.
I thought Nightlight did a great job with mine. If I would have given one note, it would have been that my vampire, Christian Brookwater, who, so the reason Christian Brookwater is in the story in the first place is because he's he's the one that's in charge of making sure humanity doesn't find out about the monster races. And so, you know, that's kind of his job. So naturally, when he sees a zombie on America's Next Great Country Star, he obviously freaks out, starts dispatching his minions and trying to figure out how the zombie got on TV in the first place. And that's his whole part of that. So like to Nicole's point, you know, because Nicole brought up how Rusty is being exploited. And again, that comes from my years in TV. As Rusty is being exploited, the vampires are trying to get him off air. So it's this whole sort of like lock, stock, and, you know, two smoking guns kind of feel to it, which, you know, I
Yes.
just sort of accidentally stumbled on as I was sitting here in front of the laptop.
Oh, that's very cool.
That's an apt. That's an apt. Like, yeah, it's very much lock, stock, and two smoking barrels. Yeah,
I love
So
it.
that's from
With
like
a
the angle.
song. Don't forget, there's
with
a
a
song
song.
that I
That's from the-
sing.
So they're trying to get him off the air or muffle that. I'm just trying to, I'm guessing at the angle, because then that
Mhm.
leads to other things. Like, we want to keep us a secret type thing.
Yeah,
Right.
Okay.
that's very.
It's a.
Eric, do you
it's-
think yours translated well to audio?
I do. I remember when I finished writing it, I was like, oh wow, this would actually probably translate really easily to audio, because it's very single character perspective, right? For most of it, it's just Cecil.
Mhm.
And him and his struggle and his thoughts, and yeah, it's all Cecil except when he interacts with other people, which is kind of rare in the story. So
Mhm.
I thought it translated really well.
Mm-hmm. No, Nightlight does such a great job. Such
yeah.
a great job. You know, I mean,
Yeah, and I know that Tonia is discerning about that as well. Like, there's
Very much so.
some, not everything's going to translate into that medium. Like, it's a cast of thousands would be maybe a little awkward. But so yeah. I was really surprised when I got the email. I was like, oh hell yeah, do that.
very cool. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, will you be writing any more zombie stories anytime soon? Like, do you like it enough to do it again?
I actually have one other that's coming out in a anthology called In the Cold, Cold Ground. It's an anthology of novellas about New England, all horror stories. And the only other zombie story that came to mind is I was wondering, I'm like, has anybody written any zombie apocalypse stories that involve aliens too? And that was it. And it's like, okay, there's the angle. I'm gonna do this ridiculous thing because you can make up whatever you want and make it work. And it's entirely about these three teens, three kids in their late teens. It's not at all about the aliens or the zombies, but they're around. But all about their story. So yeah, that's coming real soon from Cemetery Dance.
Oh, okay.
But
Nice.
I might be tapped out.
And so after that, no more zombies for a while.
I don't have any other zombie stories in me.
Well, you country fans out there will be happy to know that Rusty C. Nail will be making an appearance in Brookwater's Curse Volume 4.
He has to show up. Like, I feel like he has to survive. Like, he just has to.
Say, oh man,
I feel like if
the way he
something happens
survives
to
in the
him,
story.
right?
Spoiler.
Yeah, it's like one of those side characters where you're like, they have to live. And then when that character is killed off, like, people flip the table because that was their favorite character outside the protagonist, right?
Which I have experienced before, yes.
Wow.
A
Yes,
couple
you
of
have.
times.
Yes,
Yes, I have. It's like,
remember
oh,
that. Oh my god.
is this how George R.R. Martin feels? Yeah, it's like, yes.
This is the great thing about supernatural characters, though. You can always push them back together in some way if you want to. Speaking of George R.R. Martin, right? The Mountain, he's brought back to life as an undead thing, right?
Yes.
How many times has Dracula been, wiped out, and then gather up all his ashes and poof, Dracula's back or whatever.
Yeah, spill sprinkle a little blood on him.
Yeah, zoom. There
And
he
he's
is.
back. Especially Christopher Lee. Oh my God. How many times did he come back?
Why
Well,
won't he?
if you're popular, man. If you're
He's-
popular, you're popular.
Dude, but Christopher Lee was like the phone bill. Like he just kept coming. Like it just like, oh my God. Like it was like 9 movies or something. And wild thing, he maybe said 9 words.
Mhm,
Right?
mhm. Mhm.
I would have
But
mixed that.
scary as hell. Figure you
Protect
just
the
get rid of him by
presence,
throwing
right?
a thesaurus at him. Like, okay, you know what? Here, man.
Let me help you real quick. Oh gosh.
Ashes into concrete and see how that works.
Oh God.
See?
There has to be another way, I would think. You know, put it, wall it up behind some. Well, then you could just knock that down, I guess. I don't know.
Somebody's gonna uncover it one day and pull the
Yeah.
snake out. And
I mean, everyone's seen all the Jason movies. You know how easy it is to bring somebody back.
He was
Oh,
in
yeah,
space
true.
at
He's
some
another one.
point. At that point, I was like, that's enough.
Yeah, that's I don't know what kind of diversity inclusion NASA was talking about when that came up, but
That's not it.
that's not what Dr.
That's
King
not what
envisioned.
we-
I'm just telling you right now. It's like,
No.
I don't think Jason should have been in space. I think we should have had reparations first.
Oh God.
Um,
Oh God. and Steven's available to do your narration for your next project, just letting you know.
FYI.
Reach out to him on his website.
if you're gonna be a zombie, be the best zombie you can be. What? Too much? Is that too much?
Why
Anyway.
was that not in the story?
Right, that really should have
Because I
been.
just thought of it.
Tell me that wasn't
Right?
it. Okay, so if you just thought of it, maybe this means there's another story even outside of the one you plan to write.
Anything's possible.
Could be. Could be.
Possible.
For me, I can tell you, I don't know. I wrote one before this, but it was like years ago. I don't know. I mean, for me, when I was listening to Sumiko talk about horror comedy, I love the idea that they mentioned, but like for me, and I say this a lot, I don't get horror comedy. There's nothing funny about horror to me. Like, but then again, I can't say
Have you
that's
not
always.
read Steven's work?
I would say I can't say that's always true because I have read Steven's work. And it's funny. But I just, like the like if I go back to movies, like the Evil Dead, the original Evil Dead movies, I don't like. It's not funny. It's silly, and that's different. And there's nothing scary. Except the first one was good in terms of being scary. But
Oh yeah, the first one is
the first one's
real
pretty
scary.
good. But the comedy takes away from the fear for whatever reason for me, and so I just don't get into it. And Warm Bodies.
Yeah,
I
Warm Bodies isn't a horror though. It's not.
It's
It's
a
like
zombie. It's a zombie, right? I don't know. I was kind of having trouble with the zombie falling in love, and there was some other show, and I can't. It was on Disney, and like there were football players, but they were the football players were not all of them, but some of them were zombies. But they had like a cuff, and I don't know what was being shot into their system, but it calmed them down. But if their cuff broke, they would like become zombies. But they were playing football. I'm like, you're just gonna get it ripped off, and now you're just gonna be killing. And the guy was asking one of the cheerleaders to the prom, and something had happened to his cuff, so he was kind of half zombie-ish, half like. I was like, this is too much. I can't.
I agree with Errick. I feel like Errick, that's an example of we can do whatever we want. It doesn't have to make sense.
What was that phrase you said, Eric? What was
So
that term?
zombie football players with wristbands that kept
In high
them
school.
That's
in
right.
high school.
Yep.
But then the wristbands could be taken off, and then all of a sudden it's like unnecessary roughness, number 46, eating in the end zone,
Exactly. When they went home,
10-yard
took off the
penalty, repeat the
wristbands.
down.
I wish I could remember the name of this show. When they
Yeah.
went home, they would take off the wristband because they and their whole family were zombies. And so they just would walk around like zombies. But when they wanted to talk to someone who wasn't, they put their wristband on.
Which means you had to have enough awareness to know that the person wasn't a zombie and not dinner.
Right. Well, but what was that term you said, Eric, at the very middle of the discussion? It was something about
No, this
making up things.
made up stuff.
The beauty
The
of
gift
stuff?
of made up stuff.
The gift of made up
Gift
stuff.
of made up
You
stuff.
remember that. That needs to be a t-shirt, because really that's what it is. And we really do have the chance to do whatever we want to do and make up whatever kind of cowboy zombies we have going on here that, you know, that can sing on stage and play guitar.
There you go.
So, thank you guys so much for talking with us tonight. It was really, really fun, first of all, but very interesting. And I hope that people really found some stories that they'll be interested to check out. But before we go, please tell us where to find you and what's coming up next. I know you mentioned some of it in the beginning, but let's just reiterate and tell us where to find you. Errick, you want to go first?
Sure. If you spell my name correctly, I'm pretty easy to find on the internet. So erricknunnally.us is sort of the source of, as long as I'm keeping up with it, the source of everything that I'm doing. But I am going to be part of a few anthologies coming out soon. Like I mentioned, the In the Cold Ground, which is a anthology of a New England horror anthology. Each state gets a novella in this thing. There's of course also Blackened Roots. The Bad Book is an anthology of essentially inverted parables from the Bible, and that was a lot of fun to work on. Fright Train is a sort of a New England horror anthology, but it's all train themed of all the things,
right.
But it just has to involve a train somehow. There's one more that I like to mention. Giving the Devil His Due is an anthology,
Yes.
a Pixel project to support their programs for ending violence against women. And each one of the stories involves some abusive bastard suffering comeuppance. So it's the whole thing is revenge. It's very satisfying.
Excellent. Stephen?
Along with Blackened Roots, I also landed a Aztec mummy horror story, and trust me, this one's not funny at all. Let me see if I can reach over here real quick. Just kind of funny how that all worked out. So that's in Soul Scream, edited by wow, I didn't realize how horrible I am at this. Christopher Ryan. Just something I had laying around. Somebody finally decided they appreciated it. So that's happening. In a few weeks, I will have SVP's Little Black Book of Terror available. And that, and Nicole's in that. And that basically, it's a bunch of folks I got together to donate stories. The proceeds, or most of the proceeds, minus postage, of course, will be they'll be gifted to SAVE, which is Suicide Awareness, Voices of Education. It's a suicide prevention outlet, just something I thought I'd get myself involved in for, sake of humanity and whatever. So that's what's happening this year. And then next year, more vampires and more super intelligent Black women who become serial killers, and I'll be doing all of that stuff, and hopefully be out there in person doing the convention thing and everything like that. Oh, and I can be found at www.laughingblackvampire.com. Thank God I remembered to say that. Okay.
Nicole, tell us something.
Okay, so I have a story out in a solar punk anthology from Zombie Needs Brains, which the name of the anthology I think is actually Solar Punk. I have a poem coming out in Under Her Eye, which is also a Pixel project. That'll be coming out in October. I will be at Multiverse, a sci-fi convention in Atlanta, in October. And as far as anything else, I don't think I have, other than the SAVE anthologies, I don't think I have anything else coming out this year. Next year, you can find me at Retcon. I am the guest of honor. So Retcon is a convention in Raleigh-Durham area, so you can check that out. Please come see me. I'll be GOH that year. It's also my birthday weekend, and I turned 50. So it's going to be a crazy time. If you want to come to that, you totally should.
You are not
Find me
50.
at-
Shut
I
up.
will be in February.
You know how
Huh?
you know how this works, Stephen.
I
Yeah,
know,
yes,
I
you
know.
do.
I'm
Yeah.
just
You can find me at NicoleGivensKurtz.net, or you can find me at MochaMemoirsPress.com.
Awesome. Thank you all so very much. We really, really appreciate it, because this is like a one-of-a-kind anthology. Again, look at this amazing cover. Seriously, we didn't even talk about the artwork. Goodness.
No,
gracious.
Sean Hill is
Right.
amazing.
Crazy.
Sean Hill is amazing.
It is fantastic. Pick up your copy anywhere books are sold. All right, guys. Thank you so very much. Have a great night.
Bye.